live, by the way, but you can keep talking.
Okay. I was just gonna say it's hard to teach about the Constitution when it's suspended. So
right.
I'm just taking.
All right, we're live, folks. You guys keep chit chatting. If my guests, who are all my friends, can go to the TED Show page and make sure you're on mute on your phone if you're not Steve and you have your phone near you, or Jose. And share the show. See, it's just me and you, Joe, that get to share the show. Did I mute somebody? Hold on. No muting. Okay, let's unmute Jose. Jose, can you hear us?
I'm here, yep.
Okay, good. All right, so, but I don't see you. Do I need to pull you back on?
It says I'm on.
There you go, he's on.
I'm on a second ago. There he is. There's Jose. All right, guys, so happy 420. Is that what we say?
Yes, sir.
420.
Absolutely.
420. Go ahead. I'm just going to keep going. I've got Trisha Dennis, Steve Edmonds, Dr. Joe Cefarizzato, and Jose Belen on the show. Somebody's got a lot of feedback, so be careful. If you've got some other thing up, it is the way it is when you're on your phone. So we'll just try to keep muted when you're not talking. All right, so 420, you know I'm a you. Here. Yeah, somebody's got me on their phone.
I just muted you.
Okay, you muted
That was me. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. That's what it is when this is all new technology. There's nothing to be sorry about. It's good stuff. All right, so I have us all set up. We are good to go. See how that takes a few minutes? So welcome to the show. I love this topic. You know I'm a big cannabis advocate, even though as we talked about earlier, I have not tried it yet. True admission there. So, but I did get my medical marijuana card.
Right. So the next step is you and I taking a field trip to one of the local dispensaries so we can get you properly medicated for what you're going through right now.
Yes, I like that. Properly medicated. I think my kids would have liked that in the early years. I am definitely need to be properly medicated. All right, so I know all of you. I know your stories. Each one of you has been on the show before, but let's do intros for everybody. And we're gonna start up, of course, ladies first with the one and only Trisha Dennis. What's up, Trisha?
Hi, how are you? So I'm Trisha Dennis, and I'm president of We Are Rare Incorporated. I know everybody on this panel. I worked with everybody on this panel. And I've been active in the cannabis community since 2012, which is when we started using cannabis for my son, and a lot of you know my story. And if you want to follow Noah's story, and then just a quick intro, it's Super Noah Buds. That's his hashtag, and I'll go into that later. But I'm a big advocate in the community, and I kind of infiltrate into the local government to get into their brains.
You are a big advocate. I loved having you on the show. I loved hearing Noah's story, which I think we should, if we have time, we can, after intros, we can talk a little bit about why you got involved or how you got involved. But Steve, tell us a little bit about you. Steve Edmonds.
Okay, great. Thanks again for having me. It's great to see Trisha and Joe. We've known each other for a long time. We've all been at this for a long time. And it's a pleasure to celebrate 420 with you guys. I'm doing Hemp for Water, as everybody on the panel knows, but for everybody out there listening, it's a program to use industrial hemp to clean up our rivers and lakes. And clean up is a air quote kind of word, because we're going after the nitrogen and phosphorus of the rivers and lakes, which are nutrients and natural nutrients. They just happen to be in way too much abundance. And the overabundance of nitrogen and phosphorus is what's causing a lot of our environmental problems here in the state. So we're working on trying to figure out the best way to grow hemp hydroponically on the water so that we can use the hemp to sequester, metabolize, eat, whatever adjective you want to use there, or verb you want to use there, to remove the nitrogen and phosphorus from our water columns in our rivers and lakes.
Love it. I can't wait. And we did a show on this right before we all shut down. We did a show on hemp for water. It was awesome. It was over my head. He had to dumb it down quite a bit, but that's the norm for me. All right. How about you? I know you're brand new to this whole thing, Dr. Rosado. So tell us about you.
Yes. How do I work Zoom? As many of you know or have seen me on the TED Show, I am a medical cannabis physician. Was one of the first in the state to recommend. Hang on, I'm getting a lot of feedback, so maybe I've got this muted, so I don't know. Okay. That's
better. Well, keep going.
Okay. Anyway, so I was one of the first doctors to recommend medical cannabis in the state to an adult, and I was the first in the state to recommend to a child, a 15-year-old that had a neck cancer, and then. But prior to that, I was an advocate. I reached out to John Morgan when I started seeing the commercials in 2014 and said, I'm a physician, I'm an advocate, how do I get involved? And then the rest has been history. A week after that, I was on the Bureau of Speakers, and that's how I got to meet everybody else on this panel, little by little. And we shared the stages on many times and have supported each other through our different events. You know, Jose with Mission Zero, Steve with his water and ideas, and it's a shame that he wasn't named the director of the hemp program in the state of Florida, because he really should have been. My insensitive plug and my only political talk right now. But it's always a pleasure to be on the TED Show.
Always a pleasure. I love it when you come on. It's always you know, we always create magic on this show, all of us do. All right, last but not least, let me unmute you, Steve. Sorry, let me unmute you, Jose. And I'm going to mute Dr. Rosado. All right, Jose, you're last but not least. Tell us about you.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, happy 420, everyone. I know all you guys. Personally, Steve, pleasure to be introduced to you virtually. I'm a combat veteran, was part of the invasion into Iraq in the spring of 2003 at 20 years old. Did 2 consecutive tours and came home in 2005 with the invisible wound, post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress depends on you know, how you like to utilize the term. Long story short, we've been losing over 8,000 veterans a year to suicide. There was a number that came out, over 60,000 veterans have been lost to suicide in a 10-year span. So in 2018, my wife and I decided to start an organization, grassroots, called Mission Zero, focused on ending veteran suicide. Cannabis has been, you know, pretty much the most valuable tool in my tool belt in my fight against suicide. I've nearly taken my own life a number of times. It's going on 4 years now since my last attempt. And these last 4 years, you know, I've grown a lot. And in that growth, I realized I want other veterans who aren't there yet to find that growth and also connect with the families. And so my wife and I, over the last 2 years, have made an amazing impact within the veteran community, locally and nationally. An example of why what we're doing is so important is we went to a veteran's funeral who unfortunately committed suicide here in Orlando. And in spending time with his family, after the suicide happened, met with his mom, his dad, and the mom says, Jose, in the room next door is where my son's brain is, all over the wall. I hate to say this, but this is all about speaking the impact and why what we're doing is so important. She says, Jose, how do we clean that? And at that moment, I'm thinking, you know, it's all about ending veteran suicide, but I was made aware of what families have to go through after that. You know, so we are here as ambassadors for that family and all families to work together, end veteran suicide, but create a system, you know, to make sure that when these situations happen, that we're the ones making the phone calls out for these families, and these families are having the ability to mourn. And so we're here to make an impact on that level and beyond.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And we didn't get, Trisha, I opened your mic. We didn't get Noah's story. So we've all told a little bit of our story. Let's tell that. And so that we all have the proper intro before we dive into the topic today.
Okay, quickly, Noah is the inspiration behind the foundation. It started off that I was actually on the Nancy Grace show back in 2008. That's something a lot of people don't know about me. She heard our story and she was just kind of like, I want to, you know, she nominated me as an extraordinary parent and I won. I was a finalist and it was really a big deal. And I realized then I was on to something important. But at that time, I just thought we'd open up a foundation for children that had brain disorders and or had been affected by stroke. It kind of blew up into more rare neurological disorders, and it's kind of gone into all the cephalic disorders now. And we've ended up kind of making proclamations and awareness days across the globe, which is huge for a lot of these disorders that were unknown. We work closely with all different kinds of organizations, but Noah was not supposed to live one day. He had a good first couple years, and then about 9 years old, everything just went seizures everywhere. Everything was crazy. Short story, he lost a lot of weight, last resorts for cannabis. 2012, you put the story together. It's Florida. What do? Well, you choose life for your child. And that's what I did. And, you know, it was a rocky road. But here we are now talking about it. And it's so empowering to be able to talk about that. But now he is doing very well. He's 19.
It's amazing.
He wasn't supposed to live a day. 19 years old, and he is running in marathons all across the country, which is amazing. You know, he's in his push jogger, and we have a runner doing that with him. So we're doing crazy.
His story is so amazing, and your tenacity, making sure, you know, working with the medical professionals who would work with you, and the fact that you had to do so much stuff with the stress in addition to what you were dealing with Noah, and you just pushed through as any mom or dad would do, I think, and had the tenacity to really, really make a difference. So I love Noah's story. I love your story, and huge kudos to you. Thank you for sharing with everybody who doesn't know. And we're going to share everybody's websites. I didn't do that because I had to type it so fast, but once I'm done, I will post everyone's websites so you guys can go take a look at them and their Facebook pages. All right, so we're here to celebrate 420. Joe,
so tell them the giveaway. We got a giveaway.
No, that's what I'm going to do. See, it's good. We got, you know, Dr. Rosado is going to take over, which is good by me because I need a new White Claw. No, I'm kidding. So 420, I don't even know the answer to this, and I'm going to tell you that up front. So for the first person who can answer what is the origin of, what is the meaning of, what's behind 420?
Where did it start? Where did it come from?
Where did it come from? Where did 420 come from? I'm going to look, then you get a really nice prize from me. There's no restaurants open right now, but we can figure something out. But I promise you, I will give you something fun.
No, they've got, the restaurants are open for takeout, so you can do a gift card.
I can do a gift card. That's correct. So yes, a gift card. I like this. All right. So who knows where 420 came from? We have a guess. Francis says Earth Day.
No.
Is that correct? Okay.
No, sir.
Good guess, Francis. So I don't know the answer, but I'm going to keep looking as we go through. So let's talk about the importance of what's going on in our cannabis community, because COVID kind of shut everything down. It's shut the world down, and so we have been making great strides, I feel like, in Florida. But remember, I'm not in the inner workings of it as you guys. Where do you think we are? Anybody can jump in. I'll start with you, Joe. Where do you think we are in Florida as far as having the entire state have it all legalized?
Well, the first thing is that we went from a condition, a business that has been ostracized, that we've been penalized, that people have been incarcerated for, and now all of a sudden it is an essential business.
Okay.
Throughout the United States, medical cannabis dispensaries are all open and they are all considered essential businesses, which is huge.
That is huge.
You know, I mean, Jose Belen can tell the story of him suing the federal government, the former DOJ dick that had it in for cannabis.
There it is.
Yeah, okay, there's the Bronx in me
All
again.
right. No, it took you longer. I would have lost that bet. I would have thought you'd said something before that, but that's all right.
okay.
We got it.
FCC won't be after you. You'll be fine.
But, and now it's an essential business. So that's huge because our patients are able to go to the dispensaries, and as many problems as there are with the program in the state of Florida, and it's far from functional to be, nonetheless, it's available. And patients are able to go there and not have to go to a liquor store, which is also an essential business, and get get drunk or use alcohol to put them to sleep or manage their pain, as many of our patients have had to do in the past.
It's just, to me, it's amazing. And go ahead if somebody wants to pop in. I feel like we've made if you had told me even 5 years ago that we would be where we're at. Now, remember, I'm the outside looking in, but I'm just so happy to see that it's not demonized. I mean, there's groups that demonize it, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it's just so much more accepted. And I'm 1,000% sure that has to do with the efforts of all of you in your different areas. What are you seeing, Jose? You're down, I know you're down Miami way, down south. What are you seeing as far as the progress we're making, and then what's going on with COVID? Has that helped or hurt?
I think the progress, like Dr. Rosado said, is there. One of the issue is the cost structure for access to a lot of this medicine is still out of reach. I focus on the veteran population, and so yes, we have access right now, but there's still, some issues with cost and availability. But to be honest with you, to be sitting here in the middle of a pandemic, 2020, knowing that at least cannabis businesses have been deemed essential, it's a dream come true in a way, for those who really utilize it as a medicine. And, for those of us who have friends and families who rely on cannabis, to be able to function on a daily life, it's been amazing, but I want to see, further action, across the board where, yes, you have these, dispensaries are open, but you also still have folks like Dr. Rosado was saying that are in jail right now on cannabis charges, so exposed to COVID, so you have, society as a whole being able to access cannabis and going to the dispensaries, but then you have folks still sitting in a jail cell over cannabis charges. And I think that really needs to be looked at right now with a magnifying glass. It's not okay, for us to be out here and have access, but someone, who couldn't afford the medicine went to the black market, got pinched, and now they're in a jail cell. Those cases exist, and I think that conversation needs to be had on a grand scale right now.
Well, they're deep. What's the word? It's deep prisonizing. No, that's not it. That's my word. But they're getting rid of. They're letting go a lot of prisoners right now. Why isn't it just an easy thing with a stroke of a pen to vacate those charges?
Well, there's a gentleman in California who's a bigger pioneer than anyone today, Steve D'Angelo. He's been around since, the 60s, and he cannot obtain a global entry card from the federal government because he is a felon. He was arrested multiple times, federally and locally, for advocating for cannabis. And so he's working very diligently and aggressively for the Prisoners Project to help people have their records expunged and get, have the opportunity to be free for getting busted, like, Jose said, getting pinched for like a dime bag or some bullshit.
Well, what it really comes down to, I think, is that people need to be active within governments. Basically, we're seeing some traction in this, and we've seen it in I think it was Illinois, and we saw it in Michigan and California, where they, once they've decriminalized or legalized, then they've gone back and expunged and forgiven the past criminal records of the people that were arrested on cannabis. But this is happening only on a state-by-state level, and we need to make it very clear to our lawmakers that we want to see that happen here in Florida. And I agree with what everybody's saying here. One of the major things that we need to consider here in Florida is that we're the third largest populations in the country, and a large majority of our prisoners are there because of the war on drugs. And then we're not even going to get into the racial demographics that bear themselves out from that. It's truly disgusting. So, you know, that's one of the areas that I still advocate on the consumption side of things, because, you know, as most people here know, I pretty much stick to hemp, which I want to back up a second and say thanks to Dr. Rosado about the plug there, but also I have to give kudos to Commissioner Freed and to Holly Bell, the woman who was named for that position. They've done a very good job at climbing some pretty monumental barriers that were going to be in place regardless of who was in that situation. And as of just a couple of days ago, they just announced that the final leg of hemp commercialization and industrialization in the state of Florida is going to occur April 27th. April 27th, you will be able to apply for a cultivation license if you have agricultural property or if you have industrial warehouse, which is massive. And these all of these steps go towards the overall big question that you had for, you know, when is it going to be completely legal in all states? These are all the steps that we have to take to get there.
It's amazing, again, as an outsider, somebody who only knows it because of all the friends that I have that are advocates like you all, just the fact that we're still fighting that crazy fight. And I want to ask Tricia, and maybe Joe, Dr. Rosado will pop in. Children. So, you know, obviously Noah was under the age of 18. That was part of your fight and part of your journey that you've shared on the show before. What is the climate for, what is the perception, what is going on as far as kids being able to take cannabis medically?
Okay, so everything, to me, it's like in the past year, everything is just kind of flourished and opened up in communication. So you see parents who would have never been speaking about this 5 years ago, just posting it, you know, openly. So I feel like the line of communication, what I do feel needs work is the prices, because a lot of our families are on budgets. I can kind of say that until Noah turned 18, I'm getting a lot of feedback, so I apologize.
I know, hold on. Let me mute. I don't know who's unmuted.
Okay.
There.
Until Noah turned 18, I was kind of stuck into this income bracket where I wasn't allowed to work at all or make any kind of income because it affected all of his care. So a lot of people are on these kind of systems until their children are 18. So when you look at the price of medication in Florida, it's still up there. So I'd like to see more programs implemented for disabled people who are on fixed incomes. And we're getting there. We're seeing some programs. There's a couple organizations that are doing that. So that's good. But for the most part, it's just kind of phenomenal to see. People ask me to talk now, and I'm like, yeah, I've heard my story. Like, look at what's happening. It's just crazy. It's like, it's everywhere. You can go anywhere and get your medicine now. It's amazing.
But you couldn't before, and you had to do so many crazy things to, allegedly, crazy things to make sure that Noah got what he needed to get. And I think it's just a big kudos to you. You were ahead of your time for sure.
There's one thing too, also, that there is what everybody has kind of touched on, and that is the incarceration, because there are people that actually helped us through this journey that today are still in jail, prison, for helping my son. And that is not okay, because it's not okay for people to advocate because oh, that parent she's just trying to help her child. It's like, what about the people who had to help my child too? That is not a fair system. So I'm in total agreement with that. We have to do something about that.
So Dr. Rosado, what about you? What are you seeing with kids?
Well, our office is one of the few offices that manages and takes care of children. A lot of doctors' offices, unless they are a pediatrician, do not work with kids. But we open our offices to children, and you know, I mean, the law is there that, you know, 2 physicians have to sign off on to approve it for children below the age of 18. And last year, one of the a few of the state representatives wanted to put a cap on the amount of THC for patients below the age of 21 or 25, but yet there was no cap on the amount of alcohol that someone below the age of, you know, from 21 to 25 could drink. So you see the hypocrisy there. But we manage a lot of children. We manage a lot of children with, you know, epilepsy, with schizoencephaly. Noah was one of my patients. Together with that, we see children with cancers, different types of malignancies, which is really the heart and the sad part of this, because you get really attached to these children, and then all of a sudden, you know, the inevitable unfortunately tends to happen. A lot of children with Dravet's that also, you know, you get to a certain point, you get really attached, and certain, you know, circumstances occur. So we do take care of a lot of the children. We do manage them. We work very closely with the parents. A few of the dispensaries have created programs for children where they either provide the medication at a lower cost, or some, if I'm not mistaken, will give it to them, you know, at very, very good discounts. But again, hoping that they do have product, because many times that's a challenge in the dispensaries. And one of my biggest pet peeves is that a patient will find a specific medication that works really, really well for them, and then unfortunately they run out of that product, and then the parent doesn't have anything to give their child because that product that they were accustomed to using and working is not available for them.
If I can chime in,
Sure, I think I was going to ask you something next anyway. Go right ahead, my friend.
That's an amazing point, because at the end of the day, if you look at this conversation and what most advocates speak on, it's for compassionate access for folks to live a healthy, painless life. And that's where I hate to say the blame, but the United States government, you know, has been a facilitator on oppressing that. You know, it boggles the mind to know that you can go to Walgreens or CVS and not, you know, be out of stock of Xanax and all these, you know, other opiates and pills out there. But there's so much red tape when it comes to cannabis. And I think, you know, I speak for everyone on this podcast or on this call, you know, to say we can never undo the wrongs of yesterday, but we can make a conscious decision today to do the right thing. And every day that we wake up and these laws are still in place, the people that are in power are still failing us today. And that's what's so frustrating. If not for me as a vet, do it for the children, you know, do it for those kids that, you know, don't have the ability to have their voice heard. And that's what's so heartbreaking about this. You know, Trisha and Noah, I mean, that young man, look at what he's had to go through, what they've had to go through as a family, and they're a representation of millions of other families across America. And so it breaks my heart as a patriot, you know, having gone to war for this country alongside other men and women, knowing that the way the law is set up now, that's not a representation of the America that I fought for. I fought for the land of the free. And that means, you know, free to have access to holistic medicine. And it's so frustrating to watch every day. And that feeds right into the overdoses and to the suicides.
All right, so I was going to ask you a question about the veterans, Jose. You talked a little bit about that, which is good. I had a lot of people ask what the status was, and I think it would be good, since we're obviously never going to be able to finish in 30 minutes. I booked out an hour for you guys just to be safe, because I know you, all of you. So what about veterans? Because people ask me, what is the fight like now? Have you made inroads? Have you made progress? Because obviously I know a lot of vets. I know a lot of vets who, you know, are always dealing with something at the VA, not monsterizing the VA, but vilifying it. But where are we at? What's going on with that?
We have made progress, but a perfect example, I had a veteran in Orlando reach out about a month ago, has a bachelor's degree, single father, raising 2 daughters on his own. He also is a combat vet and has PTSD, was given a job and approved, you know, at the state level to take this job, but DOT denied him because he's a medical marijuana card holder. So you have the vet, he sent the resume, he sent me all this stuff, no record, nothing. The man is doing everything right by law, and he still was not qualified for that job for holding a medical marijuana card to treat himself from a wartime, you know, effort, you know, and that's not okay. Again, why are there, you know, 22 veteran suicides an hour is because there's still failings within the system. So, you know, on one side you have, you know, civilian employees being able to use cannabis, but if the veteran works for the federal government, is a works for the Postal Service, he can't use cannabis. You know, so it's just not, we're missing the mark there. There's a lot of vets that are unemployed because they have their card.
And a lot of them are like several, and I don't know if this has changed, but I've done shows in the past where a lot of people don't even want to put anything about the medical marijuana because of they're also afraid of, and each employer, I guess, gets to decide about the drug screening, and there's just not any standard in place for anything. And so how are you supposed to maneuver through your job, your work, your life, when you never know? I mean, Stacy, my wife, is a teacher, and each school gets to make that determination. So if she had a medical marijuana card, it could be difficult for her. Not that her school said that or that she's dealing with that, but I know that a lot of teachers are afraid to get the card for that reason. All right, so let's talk about opportunity, because that was one of the things. Let's talk about what's going on, and either opportunity that you guys see, some things that are positive coming up, or opportunity for people to get involved. I think people still are a little bit afraid to speak up. You know, I know that sounds crazy because you guys are in it all the time, but I'm over here, and I can tell you the people over here want to get involved and want to do something, but they don't know how to do it, and they're afraid of the attention that they're going to get. I tell them that's silly, but you know, you guys can tell them that in a much better way. So I'll start with Tricia from a parent's perspective. Maybe what can people do to get involved? What can people do?
I mean, in their own community or throughout the whole state, I mean, there's tons of things. There's different organizations that I kind of see doing a lot of legislation, and that's Florida Can. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're amazing. They do a lot of advocating up in Tallahassee. We follow them closely as an organization. Get involved, ask questions. You know, that's a great organization to talk to. The fight is not over. Like, honestly, like I'm at a point where 2012 and it's 2020, and I kind of want to grow my own. So I'm kind of annoyed that it's not going to be on the ballot. So until people start speaking up, there's nothing that's going to happen. It's going to take people to stand up and look into different organizations and who they can get behind, and how do we change this? Because I think everybody kind of loves the dispensaries, but you know, I like to go there for certain things that I'm not going to be able to make, but I also want to grow my own, you know, in a circumstance like what we're facing right now. It'd be kind of nice to not be roughing out. That's, you know, it's kind of
understood. I have to tell you, then I'll ask Dr. Rosado next. I had several people message me and go, "I can't believe you're going to talk about that on the TED show." That's how funny people are. Like somehow it's gonna diminish the TED show. And if I haven't already diminished that with the insane stuff I do on the show, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, that's how people think still. Oh my God, you're gonna talk about it? Yes, I'm gonna talk about it. We're all gonna talk about it. Dr. Rosado, how about you?
Well, this is the only time that I recommend going against the great philosopher Tony Montana's recommendation. Do not get high with your own supply. If you want to get involved, you must become a patient. because by becoming a patient is how you learn and understand all the trials and tribulations that you must go through of dealing with employment or dealing with, as a parent, having children and having to go into a dispensary. Then you can actually speak from a point in a place of knowledge and advocate for it appropriately. But if you're on the outside and say, yeah, I support it, but I'm not really going to get my card because I'm not going to get high, or there's nothing wrong with me, you should become a patient and understand from the inside, and then be able to have a greater understanding.
And Joe, when you get a chance, I'm going to go to Steve next, but there's a couple of people who I think answered the question or tried. If you can see, if you can look on the TED show.
Yeah, we have a winner.
Oh, we do.
Charlotte, yeah, Charlotte answered it very well.
Good for you, Charlotte. All right, Charlotte, I'll reach out to you after the show and we'll get you something real good. And then of course I'll promote it and take a picture with you virtually and we'll figure it out. But thank you for participating, everybody. All right, Steve, how about you from your perspective?
Well, from my perspective, I think it's all about continuing education and normalizing it and talking about, I mean, not for nothing, I'm going to hit my hemp stuff. It's got to be educating people that it's more than just medicine. It's more than just adult use, and adult use is going to come in the next couple of years. But, it's also 50,000 other products that we can make. This you wanted to tie this into COVID, and here's a nice positive thing that's going to come out of COVID is that we are actually going to have to do our own manufacturing in this country, and we're going to have to make our own products. And guess where all those manufactured products are going to come from? They're going to come from industrial hemp. Over 50,000 different products. There is so much opportunity. There's so much opportunity coming down the pike here very, very soon in every kind of industry that you can think of to be involved with this plan. That it's really an amazing time in history in terms of cannabis history to be involved in it. And as far as being active, or how do you be involved in what everything's going on, everybody's touched on it a bit. If you have something that you think you can benefit from cannabis, be a patient. But you don't have to be, I'm sorry, Doc, you don't have to be a patient to be an advocate. You don't have to be a patient. You don't have to be a patient to tell people what this plant can do. You have to be educated, and you have to be knowledgeable, and you have to be willing to talk to your neighbors, and you have to be willing to talk to your local officials, and you have to be able to say, hey, Mayor, I want to talk to you about this thing. I want to tell you why I want to be able to have a dispensary in my city, even though at the time I wasn't a patient. That's the kind of advocacy that people need to be doing if they really want freedom. And for me, that's what this whole plant is all about, is freedom. The freedom to be able to build what I want with it, the freedom to be able to help my body the way I want to help my body with it, and the freedom not to have the government to tell me what the hell to do. And, with that, I'll say happy 420.
I love it. Happy 420. All right, Jose, last but not least, tell us what do you think?
Education. At the end of the day, you're either a patient or you're not. And if you're not a patient, understand, what folks who are patients, are going through right now. Look at history, take some time and read the facts behind cannabis and all the positives behind it. And at the end of the day, you can't argue with facts. And that's what I think we all stand for. We speak on cannabis professionally, responsibly. We do our best to put our right foot forward. And at the end of the day, if you may not be a user of cannabis, understand your neighbor may be a user because he's a vet and he's gone through some things. And all we want to do is be able to function. And again, when we think of the spirit of America, it's all about progress, not regress. Cannabis is a plant based on progress. If we want to progress forward, we can do it, like Steve said, in over 50,000 different ways with hemp, but also medicinally. So just educate yourselves and be a goodwill ambassador. Speak to your local politicians. Don't be afraid of the stigma. You know, if you're going through something, don't be afraid to try something that actually may help you feel better. And that's what a lot of folks, I think, are going through. They're so used to being miserable that they can't imagine that this plant could actually help them. Right. And you know what? Give it a shot. And if it works, there you go. And if it doesn't, at least you gave it a shot.
Great. I love it. You know, I think one of the lessons I've learned over the time having all of you as guests and talking about this so much is that the destigmatizing of it is critical. And the only way that can happen is if, like you all said, you educate yourselves. We have to educate ourselves on, you know, I don't like to smoke, for example. And so I've been pointed out, I'm pretty sure all four of you at one time have said, Ted, you don't have to smoke. There's many other ways of taking it in, ingesting it, having it be the medicine that you need. And so just little things like that could be the blockade for someone. That's why I didn't pursue it for so long, because I thought, well, I don't like to smoke. I don't like even the smell of that. But there's other ways for me to do it. And so I know I'm speaking for a lot of people. So just educate yourselves. There are so many ways that you can get involved. And if you want to be a patient, if you have something, there are so many ways that you can take it. And it doesn't have to be smoke if that's what you're not, if you don't like it like I do. So you guys are it's so important to have you on the show. It's such a blessing to have all of you on the show. I love what each of you are doing so much for the community, and not just the cannabis community. You're helping everybody that is impacted or could be impacted by the cannabis community. And I'm just very, very, very thankful for all of the things that you guys are doing. So Trisha Dennis, Dr. Joseph Rosado, Steve Edmonds, and Jose Belen, thank you guys very much for being on. Happy 420.
Absolutely. And for education, remember the book.
Oh, there it is. There's the
Open
education
Healing,
book.
The
Open
Case
Healing.
for Cannabis.
That's
You'll
it.
get educated.
Emperor wears no clothes. Yeah, that's the Bible. You know, it just got republished. Bruce Dietz and Daniel Hare just republished The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
Oh.
If you want to learn about hemp and cannabis, go to Amazon and check it out. And I want to echo Trish's shout out to Florida Cannabis Action Network. They are the people that are fighting for the people. If you want to learn more about cannabis and how to be involved, go check them out.
All right. You guys share the show when you get a chance. Make sure you tag yourselves and your organizations. I will do the same. Thank you so much. Happy 420, everybody. Thanks for coming on the show. Love each and every one of you and appreciate you. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye, guys.